Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel, Art Classes My Way. We are continuing on with our little ring here, and now we're going to do some more fun with the decorative elements. This is supposed to, at least for me, this is going to end up being a set of several rings that are going to turn into kind of like a glove inspiration. But I will want all of these pieces to be similar to each other enough. So I got to have that guy there to keep me in mind, trying to make these two feel like they are a part of a whole. Now, I do have this little crystal in here, and he's just propped up there by a little tail of wire. And to see if I even like that. And to a point I do, but it does feel awful different from what's going on here. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to put a decorative copper element over the top of this. Because instead of putting eyeballs, I don't want every finger to have an eyeball. Or, I don't know, maybe I should. Because my original idea was to have the two eyes on that piece on the ring finger, and then when I got to the body of the hand, I was going to put the larger eye, the last eye that I haven't even used yet, the amber one. I was going to kind of try to put it in this area on the hand. But perhaps I should take that blue one and use it. It would end up being on the same part of the finger. This is for the middle finger, and it would be on the end part right here. More the flippy part than anything, the part that'll bend and stand up the most. But, I don't know. We will see. But for now, let's just go ahead and work on our decorative elements while I'm trying to figure that out. Now, you might notice that this isn't exactly aligned very well. That's because my fingers, and I've been painting my countertops, so, or not my countertops, but my cabinets in my kitchen, so apologize for the paint. But as you can see, my middle finger isn't exactly straight. So if I try to make this piece straight, then it kind of goes off to the corner here. So I have to, in order to make it feel like it follows my finger, I have to just reshape it just a little bit so that way it feels more correct while I'm wearing it, where it would look a little bit more funny when I'm not wearing it. But that's just the way my fingers are. My ring finger, my pinky finger, my thumb, they're pretty straight, but my pointer and my middle finger, they are curved. So, and since in a way I'm kind of making these for myself, I'm not saying that I wouldn't sell it. If I could find somebody who'd be willing to pay me for it, I would. Just need to reshape it. But overall, since as far as I know, I want to be the one wearing it, I'm going to make it look good on me. So this is the in-piece tail for this here, and he's not got too much life left in him. He's probably going to snap on us pretty soon. So we'll go ahead and roll this wire downwards over him so that way when we do cut him or he breaks on his own, he's hidden and nice and tight underneath this wire that's holding him down. And I think I want to kind of imitate a little bit there and a little bit kind of like what's going on, maybe more a little bit underneath. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, but I do want symmetrical elements. Have this guy come and wrap around and make sure he lays down, since he is going underneath, and he would mess with the functionality between these two and the mobility and how flat they lay together. And it looks like they incorporate just fine, so we'll just leave his little fanny there. And then we'll figure out what to do with these guys. Looking mighty similar to the Kingdom Hearts Heartless symbol at the moment. Probably last time I really cared about that series, but whatevers. And I'm going to try to get these kind of symmetrical with each other. I want them to crisscross each other right down the backbone here a little bit. And while I'm thinking about if I do or do not want to put an eyeball there, we'll just leave this wire here as kind of like a placeholder for it. Or instead of putting this one back there, I'm going to try to hold the main body of him still by grabbing hold there. And I'm going to try to shape this to where it's actually following this other wire a little bit, just for more visual interest. And stayed nice and still. It still feels like that shape up there. But I didn't end up wrapping it around. We just put it going this way. Now if I want, and which I do, I think, I'm going to go ahead and curl the end of this, like so. There. And I could take this guy, wrap him all the way around, come around here, and put a very short curlicue right there. And I mean short, like basically he's going to fold over and curlicue. So go ahead and put the curlicue in. And he just won't quite make it. But that's okay, we'll just make him look pretty on the back here. There. And again, like I said in my previous video, why bother putting all these decorative elements here when this closes and you're really not going to notice it that much? The devil's in the details. So that's just a nice, lovely little detail. It feels like we thought about how the back could look rather than it just being where everything ends up and looking like a giant electrical box. We can actually make it look pleasant to look at underneath. But I do need to obviously do some work with it because now it's blocking the curve and the functionality there. So I don't think I want you. I think I want you. We'll just flatten it back a little. And we'll change the curve on him just a little bit more to get him scrunched up in there, and we'll see. Better. And still, nice little detail in the back. Now, I felt like I personally got this corner way too sharp when I used this tool, so I just came in here, I put this into the inside crook here, and I just flattened it, or flattened the back of the wire up against that hoop, just so that way, because it's larger, and it just gave it a more subtle curve than what it had before, and I think that'll end up being a lot more pleasant in the end. Let's tighten this up. I just straightened this wire in the back a little bit more. Whoop. Still looks pleasant from the back, but it also gives us a little bit more of a swoop coming around feeling. It just makes it overall just feel a little better. And I'm thinking I may either want to shorten this or go ahead and cut half of it off, maybe half of the hoop off, and have it curl in the other direction so that way it doesn't feel quite so meh. Because it's not quite long enough to feel flowy, but it's too short to feel like a small decorative element, like a little flourish. It's kind of in an awkward in-between area. So, cutters. And give it a little nip. And then, since that's just a little half area there, it's not a big deal to just start rolling him in the opposite direction. Especially when you get your square nose in here and just lightly smush, smush, smush. Yeah, that makes it feel a little bit more like something's growing, a little more organic feeling. And I can just change it just a little bit. Come back in here with this guy. Change a few more curves. There. That's looking pretty good. Now, I think what I want to do is I might come in here and wrap most of this in black. We'll see. Might even just be better to wrap this guy all in black. So that way we're bringing some of this color up into the decorative elements a little bit. But we'll leave this part be for now. There's all kinds of areas where I can keep adding wires and so on. And if you saw in this piece, the eye was glued down first, and then I built everything else on top of the eye afterwards and sewed it down to the body, which this would be the body here, which allowed me to add more base wires, more elements, and even though it was glued down, it was glued down to hold it still while I worked on it. Now if it comes unglued, the worst possible thing that's going to happen is he's going to rotate. But there again, that's not necessarily as big a deal if he rotates, because what else are you going to do to keep him in there and keep him still? You can't solder him, you can't, not much that you can do other than glue him. And I left enough gap underneath that if such a thing were to happen with the syringe ends that some of the industrial jewelry glue comes with, it's very easy to get up in there and re-tack him down. So, ideas, it's not the most ideal of things to do. Oh, that's a shine. I'm trying to scrape off a shine here. It's not the most ideal way to attach something, and again, it's not necessarily what is attaching it. All this wire is now holding it down and holding it on. But as far as holding him still, maybe not exactly the best, but it's the best that I know when you already have a pre-made acrylic eyeball. And the same with this guy too. Although, he's got some other things going on. In order to get this feeling of free floating on this side, he is glued down. The glue is a major part for the blue eye in order to get this floating idea on this side, or this unwrapped idea over here. Now we're going to move on to this part, and I'm going to pretty much try to imitate this. So that way it's a nice little callback. I also moved some of the wires that I wove to make a nice little area. One, it's predominantly just so that way some of these gaps that are just naturally going to happen because of the weave, I've moved them up so that way I can take up some of that room, some of that slack, and it makes it feel a little bit nicer overall as far as how much space they have to get away from each other and how much spacing is going on, and kind of limiting their movement ability. So let's see here. How be easier for me to turn it this way, wouldn't it? So in order to get this crisscrossing effect, all I do is grab a hold of the end of the wire, make sure everything is nice and straight like a fresh wire, and I'm just bringing it over and guiding it around by pretty much just grabbing hold of the tip, and then I'm going to go sharply over here. Grabbing hold of the tip. I want it to cross along the backbone there, so I'll put my finger here and have you go underneath so that way it's a little easier. And I want these two to pretty much cross over in the same area. So just nice and gently guiding those elements. Now for here, I think maybe just a little different because I've already, these double curls that I got going on here have kind of been already recalled up here. And I think for being, you'll lose a lot of that slender fingernail feeling if I do this to it. So I'm still going to try to keep in mind what I'm doing, but I'm going to have them kind of concave inwards a little bit, right where they pretty much go over the edge or come up from over the edge. Just kind of pull them inwards if you can see that. And I'm just slightly pushing it over using the roundness of my tool to work with me. And I'm just going to lay them over here, or lay them down. And try to get them nice and even with each other, let alone the piece. I'm going to put my thumb here. I'm also trying to hold the shape, the concave shape as well, so I am putting pressure on all three corners, the top spine and these two side parts. But I'm also trying to keep pressure here, so that way the body that I've already shaped doesn't change when I start moving that wire. And now, there we go. And that's looking, got some similar elements going on, so that makes me plenty happy. Let me just double check what I did in the back. Right, and then these ended up being on front. So now with where these guys are, I'm pretty happy with them. And they are a little bit smaller, narrower piece. So I'm going to collapse them, putting my finger on the back, so that way the crisscross stays even with the spine. And I want to go ahead and take these guys and pretty much tighten them down, and then push those inwards, so that way they concave downwards with the shape of the overall fingernail going on here. Make sure I don't accidentally flatten my fingernail part. All right. And then I want to just take them and give them a little rotate. Give them a little rotate. There we go. So that way I can start pushing them back up this way. They have a nice little decorative element here, kind of mirroring almost that heart shape that was put on the end here underneath. And I can even anchor them down as well if I want. But let's go ahead and just mush and smush. Still looking great on the front. All right. And what this pretty much does is allow me to pretty much put these guys in reverse. And I can come back down, wrap around the side, and wrap around the side. Another really cool decorative element. I'm starting to actually like the bottom a lot more than the top. I hate it when that happens, but oh well. Although it feels very Art Deco, what's going on the bottom side, but that's okay. And now I have two decorative elements, even though they're short, two decorative elements coming this way, and you can even add more base wires to these guys, and then you can have the base wire just wrap underneath a little bit. And then you'll have 4 sets of base wires back in this direction, attaching whatever it is that you want to be your centerpiece right there. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on with this direction. And just very simply guiding these around. And if I want these to come in a little bit more, now's a good time to do it when I'm shaping these outer pieces here. Now I'm wanting this curl to be a little bit tighter, and in order to change its shape a little bit, I'm going to grab a hold of him with my square nose and just kind of slightly rotate him until it is more into the shape that I'm wanting. There we go. And that's pretty well holding itself on right there. Very little movement. And that allows me to just come in here and reshape as much as I want to. Now granted, these two smaller wires here, they had moved a little bit, so I just shove them over just a little. There we go. They're right back where they ought to be. And let's take a look-see on. Other than the fact that something really feels like it needs to be here, and I'm not sure a copper decoration's really going to do it, so I might just have to give in and do the crystal. And I can't say that I'm 100% sold on this top part here. I'm going to get a file and work on that. But now that that's gone, let's just see here if I can't move this around a little bit more. Let's just take a little bit of this off. It just all feels too much. Too much, too much. Overdone. Too big. Maybe we simplify it like that. It feels a little smaller. There, actually that makes me a lot happier. And we got a little bit of an illusion going on. Let go of that. Where I just took this curl and curled it behind instead. In the front, it looks like it is this piece being wrapped around. So that's kind of a cool little illusion. So it feels overall right. And I don't know how to explain that feeling of rightness any better than it feels right. It's just something that you can get a feeling for over time. And sometimes that feeling of wrongness is what some artists might even, be going for, that, that it's especially in like a horror movie or something like that, it's a great little tactic. That feeling of wrongness is a great way to put people on edge. And in a way, you could say, well, yeah, for this kind of gothic, dark-looking thing, that feeling of wrongness, that feeling of darkness, that's definitely a valid thing to shoot for with a piece like this if you wanted to go that way. I personally don't. I've always found beauty in both dark and mundane things and everyday things and pretty frilly things, and everything is beautiful in its own way. And I've never been one of those people that like feeling on edge. Alright. Now we can either go for a long crystal Or we could say that's too much and just go for a little dollop. I do have a couple of other charms that I could see, but I'm afraid that they're too big overall, because as big as this piece is going to be when it's all together, it might be just too much. And I have this adorable little bat, copper bat. But, I mean, he's like more of a focal piece for a necklace. He's like about that big when you take into account his wingspan, but he's a cute little thing. And he would be adorable for this, but I'm afraid that he's just going to be too big for one finger. I think we'll just go with this guy, and then we can get a couple of interesting wraps with him as well. Alright. In that case, what we're going to do, we got this guy underneath here. I'm just going to unwrap him just a little bit. Straighten him out. And where is my spool? Give myself a good size length. And I want my black. I'm going to get a good length of this black going here. I'm going to take a small amount of him, and I'm going to go ahead and just tack down this area right here, which will also give me the opportunity to tack down right there as well. Oop, where you going? It's fun when the cat sees the wire and then just pulls it right out of your hand. I want to pull myself enough wire through that it should be more than enough for me to pretty much get done what I want to get done here. And I don't have to try to sew with all of this wire. That'd be enough. And we're just going to go around a few times. Lay all this wire down nice and neatly, each one laying beside the other. And ain't going to work. Come on. I think I want to do just a couple more. So that way that row of black wire, it's thick enough to where it looks like this is done intentionally rather than, well, there's no other way to do it and I can't really hide the wire, so I'll just try to put as little as possible. Let's own up to it. Yes, we sewed the wire down here. This is where we wanted it to be. And this is 100% intentional. And we can always even that out with a few other areas, like perhaps here we can put a nice little sew down, even though it's not really sewing it down, and then we can put a third one here to sew down, even though it's not really sewing it down, it's just there more for aesthetics. And then it feels like it's a part of the design. And from here, just like how I added a wire into the black piece, got this length of wire here, I'm just going to put a little U in it. I want to make sure it's fairly even amount of wire on both sides. One goes one way, one goes the other. It makes weaving a little easier. And then we're just going to go ahead and start sewing in. Now this is the tail of the wire that I used to sew this down in front. That's why I left myself lots of black wire afterwards, so that way I could start coming up this direction with it. Now if you want to, you could go ahead and start pretty much covering all of this copper wire right here in black. It kind of adds to the mystery of your piece. Like, oh, well, where did these black wires start coming from? They just came out of nowhere. Well, it's just a piece. It's kind of like changing your weave. Our weave before was bare wire. Now we've, just by adding a weave and adding a different color in a hidden place, it feels like we have a mystery wire that's just all of a sudden come out of thin air. Out of absolutely nowhere. Oh my god, it's a mystery. And since it's underneath, we're not going to worry about trying some of the things we worried about up here, like this, the hoop part, making sure that that was, it looked intentional, like there were bare areas of wire intentionally. Although with this crystal there now, that's going to be a moot point because you're really not going to see it at all now. But that's alright, in case you had a different idea or look that you were going for. At least by the time you get to that point, you are pretty much ready for it. Yeah. Yeah. So I got quite a bit of weaving to go in front of me, so I will see you guys soon. All right, now it's time to start attaching here. So all I've really done, again, I just wove up this way, and I'm going to give these guys a little curly end, just a little bit, so that way it acts like a stopper for that wire. I want them nice and symmetrical, even though they're not going to be symmetrical to each other here in a minute. Just want those there. And I have taken this crystal, and the hole in it wasn't drilled correctly, so this copper wire only goes through part way. But for me, that's fine. That actually kind of like acts like an ending for that copper wire, so I just moved it over so that way it snakes through in appearance. But these guys are still going to be holding this guy down and holding it in place. I'm also going to take a little bit of jewelry glue, put it on the end of this copper wire here, so that way when I put it in, it kind of glues itself a little bit. And then I can get rid of all that excess glue on the side there once it's good and dry. So got that in alignment. Now I'm going to take these guys here, and because that glue's not dry, I can just slip this one underneath, going upwards. And I'll do the same with this guy over here, up and under. I want them to again be in some relative form symmetrical to each other to this point. Where that tail. One side is appearing to be shorter than the other. That is fine with me. I'm going to take my thumb and put pressure down on this once I got it pretty much where I want it, which is not going to be easy. Because of course, what's the fun of doing anything easy? I'm going to wrap this guy coming up and around. Get this tail off in that direction. And then underneath. And that holds him in place very nicely. And any decorative stuff that we do at this point is pretty much going to just hold on to this and make it even snugger and tighter. Now, sorry, there was a phone call and now I've forgotten what we were doing. Oh well. Oh, so since this guy ended up being shorter overall than this piece, I'm going to go ahead and bringing him around near the bottom, but I just want, when it comes to the symmetry of it, where they crisscross over the piece overall, that is where I want that symmetry. That is most important to me. And got that right there, just fold him right over, and we got a little extra tail peeking out there. We'll just clip that off. Go ahead and take the copper wire and we're going to go around. And then we could either cut this guy short and give it another little curl to reflect this curl and the curl on the side here, or what we can do is leave it long and you can go ahead and use it as a decorative element through the whole piece again. Or shape it however you wish to shape it. I'm going to play around with it as a long decorative element just to see what it... Now with this one, what I'm going to do with it is I am going to go down in between my weaves, and I'm going to use the spine that we put in down the middle as an anchor point. Pull him on through here. And I want it to come back up pretty much exactly where he went down into. All right, and double check. Yep, he got up to shenanigans back there. So just untwist him a little bit. Just working through, but do mind your weave that you've done overall along the back. You don't want to pop the wires or anything by accident. Just move them back into place. And now we have a great little anchor right there. It looks nice from the back. And we'll just go ahead and flatten this guy back out. Now I feel like that crystal, even if this were to pop out, I feel like he's pretty secure in there. He can't really drop down with this wire being here the way it is, unless this wire gets moved or changed. And there's still some playing that can be done with that as well. And because of the tension of this guy pushing itself into the side here, because remember I used force to push it over into this area to begin with, he's got a lot of tension pushing himself back into this crystal here. So I feel like he's pretty secure, barring that somebody is intentionally trying to take the piece apart. And at that point, there's really nothing you can do. And now, the thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to fold him back behind the crystal. Which won't be the easiest thing in the world, because if you try to lift him, you're going to be lifting against this, and that's where we anchored it down. And you know, it's you did a good job anchoring it if it's difficult to undo what you did. And we'll bring that over, and I think we'll just put a little curl right there at the top. You behave yourself. Stay. Even if you really look back here, he's come all the way over to this side, and then I've rounded him, and he's doubling back on himself. I am perfectly happy with that. It gives me the appearance that I want without giving away all my little secrets, pretty much. Appears to the underside of the overall piece. So I'm just rotating it over, finding a place to dive down in between the wires. And if I give it a little push, I'll be able to find him and grab a hold. Or I'll just push him this way. Come on. Don't be shy. And it also allows me to kind of make a anchor around these two in addition, so that's just a bonus. Now once I got him under here, I'm going to go ahead and start curling him like a normal head pin. But I'm also going to be sure to try to keep him where I want him on the top here. All right, so again, somebody just walked into the gallery. It's so much fun to try to do stuff here. This is a busy day here. Normally this doesn't happen, but one of my favorite artists just came in at this gallery. He does a lot of woodworking. Mike Abney. He is the coolest dude ever. I love him. He is all into nature. He does a lot of wood turning, woodwork type stuff, and he knows so much about nature and wood. I tell you what, we can just sit and talk for hours. He is so cool. But pretty much where we gotten off to, you can see these two together, and from here we took this wire going along, and then we curled it around there, brought it here, and it pretty much ends right here on the side, which it's pretty snug, and because it's such a small piece, tell you what. So we brought it around the sides, and I feel like he's fairly secure. I will continue to try to secure him down just a little bit more, but overall he does disappear where I want him to disappear, although this wire's got to come down just a tiny bit more, and I think I'm going to anchor the overall piece. Now there's some straightening that still needs to be done, and square nose, plenty simple to do. And I personally feel like I need some more black. I got the two black pieces down here, I got the black wrap over here. I'm feeling like maybe this curl, to feel different from this piece of copper coming this way, needs to be wrapped in black. So it won't take anything to do that. Since it's all still one piece, it's easy to just go on the underside and just thread through. Because I want this wire hidden just a little bit more in the back. Now I'm going to go ahead and take what little bit of wire I have left, and I'm going to come down and wrap around this way. It kind of gives it a really cool little spider effect, and then I'll wrap it around this part a couple of times, 3 times. It helps anchor this curl down, so that way if it gets caught on like a thread of somebody's clothes or something, it doesn't just go off into the great beyond. And a large part of the gapping is going to be reliant upon, 1, where you give it a nice little snug tug, and 2, where you come through at and wrap it around too. If you leave a little gap tends to translate into a larger gap. Not always, but it is a pretty good rule of thumb. I want to go around one more time. Never stop with even numbers if you can help it. Unless it's a weave, then nobody's going to notice if it's even or not. But when it comes to a detail like this, you want to end it on an odd number. And I don't think I have enough to go to 5, so 3 should be just fine. And I want this to kind of, instead of laying side by side like this, I want it to come up over this little corner here. So we'll take that a little further over. If it wants to. It doesn't look like it's going to want to. Well, you know, best laid plans. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap inside, and the wraps are going to, you want to pull it just tight enough that it's not laying on top of what's already been wrapped around. You want it to kind of fall in line, fall in between, find itself a nice little home. And if you have to move, it's kind of like kindergarten. If you got to move some kids around so that way everybody plays nicely, then that's what you got to do. Assign seating. Well, I have enough extra. Why not go around a 4th time? It's not enough to do anything with, so I might as well just go ahead and use it up. And this wire is done. And there we have it. So we are pretty well done here. We have this piece that echoes this middle piece here. And then we have some of the design going back this way echoed in this part. And we even have some of this echoed right in there. And I've shown you guys how to do your own spine, the reason for hammering the end down a little bit, and our crystal, which they don't look exactly the same, but they look similar enough that they don't look out of place when worn together. And especially if I make the other 2 claws for the thumb and the ring finger, and like I were to put a crystal on that one and this one, then it'll look like it all pretty much goes together, because then the eyeball is going to be reflected in the handpiece that I plan to do. So that's the end of pretty much the ring part of it. The 2 claws that I plan to do, unless I do something kind of really different off the wall, which again, the claw, it's just going to be the end piece right there, or in this case, the exaggerated end piece here. Went too far with both of them. There. This one won't be quite as exaggerated as this, but I'm going to have it go to about here. And then the thumb's probably going to come to about in here, or I could make it longer. It is the thumb, so it can go a little bit more, it can have more length and still not be nearly as unwieldy as this piece would be on a regular basis. And there's just a little bit of minor tweaking to go on here and there. And by doing this kind of a connection here, this is a better connection than what I've done here at this point. It's because I was basically building this as a ring by itself, and then all of a sudden I just didn't stop, and it evolved into this. That's why this is the way it is. Honestly, if I had built it this way to start from the beginning, something should have come off here as 2 pieces of wire, making a hoop and coming back and making a nice strong weave in between them would have worked out a lot better in between for the long term of it. Now, as far as I wanted to have the longer knuckle piece on this one, if you're doing a longer knuckle piece, you can't do long knuckle piece, and then have the front hook or point, because no matter what, the front point needs to go on top of For instance, if I decided to put a knuckle piece here, they would have to meet in the middle, and this guy can't do anything at that point. So keep that in mind when you are designing. If you want to have a front knuckle piece, then you can't have the middle piece. He's not going to have a long knuckle piece to it. Now you can do it to where it's long back here, or you can even do it point, point, point going this way, or you can have no points at all, and then you can get something that looks a little bit more like this. I do recommend building up the wire on the backs, like how I have done. You kind of close up the gap that's in between a little bit better, so that way it doesn't feel like, you know, oh, eh. Of course, there's no better explanation for it than that, but that's where we are currently. And again, 2 claws, and I'm thinking I might even get some chain involved in the piece, because even though these rings are resizable, even at that, they are very hefty. If somebody who has bigger fingers than me were to put, for instance, this guy on, these sides might not come down far enough to really hold it on. It might be able to still fling off. And just for, you know, extra security, even for me, even though, I mean, I could really have a go at it and it's probably not going to come off, but it wouldn't hurt to have chain, you know, nice little swag on the side for a decorative element, maybe even 2 swags. You have one that's a lot looser, and then a second one that's not quite as loose to go back to the handpiece. And then it's just more security. You know, it's not going to go anywhere. Even if it were to go somewhere, it can't go somewhere because there's chain involved. So it never hurts to have a little extra. And plus, the chain will add a really interesting decorative element. It's going to add a different texture, and it's going to add a texture in the bare areas to help kind of set the overall piece off. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little set of videos. Like I said, I do plan to still video and show you guys the claws, and the handpiece might even be... I might just do a video on that, or even a couple of videos. We'll see how long it takes with the bracelet. You're going to see the overall evolution of the whole piece still. But other than that, the tutorial part for the rings is pretty much done. I know I didn't show you how to do this one. It was on an entirely silent video, but that was because my audio, one, messed up. 2, 100% honest with you, I didn't think anybody would be that interested in this project. Pretty much where I've grown up, it's like, oh, fantasy stuff. Okay. Oh, wow, I like that still life. You know, and I do apologize in a way. I also assumed that maybe YouTube and the internet was the same. I forget that there are weird and bizarre people out there just like me. It's kind of like going to college. You get made fun of and bullied all through high school, and then you go to college and it's like, oh, my fellow nerds, you exist. Yes, I do want to play D&D. But yeah, I think I want to do, there's something about here that feels really plain. I might just put a couple of little copper pieces like how I put these copper pieces in. Yeah, they just hook around and then curl and then tie down. That's really all there is to it, and honestly, I think I will. It'll take away from the fact that you can see that ring underneath, which kind of, on top of my wire job here, yeah, it's not too terribly fantastic, so I can hide some of that with doing something like this, and then I can just take the brass wire and wire over the top of all of it and make it all look nicer. And again, always keep in mind that when you are doing a project like this, that some people's fingers aren't perfectly straight. That's why this piece is not 100% straight. Because my middle finger isn't straight. They just curve. That is just the way it is. And honestly, my pointer finger is also curved, and that's why he kind of almost peeks out around the corner there a little bit. I can rotate it, but then it's not exactly centering. You can still see the edge of my finger. But yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little set of videos, and who knows, I might try to make one without a middle piece. So then basically it would be this ring and a claw, and then chain the 2 together. Ew. I don't know how to stop. I hope you guys had fun hanging out. I'm glad you did come out and hang out with me. I do have a Patreon. If you feel that you'd like to contribute to my channel, that would be awesome and wonderful of you all. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great day.